Hello everyone, and welcome to my Y&R the Restless official 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Kyle's suggestion and Victor's deal. Victor makes a tough deal with Kane and then gets the Newmans ready for another fight, while Kyle pops the question to Claire. Lily also wants Kane to finally come clean. To see all of the action in Genoa City, tune in next week. Kane was left reeling after Victor turned the tables on him, reminding him that no one can outmaneuver him for very long. Adam and Nick were able to set aside their long-standing disagreements because they realized that their family needed them together more than they needed them apart. Although the brothers' peace felt tenuous at best, it was a rare instance of cooperation between them. Lily pushed Holden for answers throughout town, not letting him dismiss her. Kane revealed more about his enigmatic absence from Genoa City. In an uncommon display of candor, he disclosed information that clarified why he preferred to keep his new empire a secret and why he kept his distance from the individuals who were most important to him. His disclosures were significant because they made people who knew him reevaluate their assumptions about his background. The revelation raised doubts about Kane's current motivations and if his return to Genoa City was motivated by family, atonement, or something far more sinister. The final moments starring the late Tristan Rogers as Colin Atkinson were also included. When Nate confessed to Devon that he and Audra were no longer together, he released his burden. Questions concerning his judgment and the decisions he had made under duress were raised by his candor. Lily, meantime, was unable to shake the thoughts of her past with Kane. Old wounds she wasn't prepared to face were reopened when she was reminded of all the love, suffering, and betrayal they had experienced together. Nick put in extra hours elsewhere working with Phyllis to control the damage. Nick intervened to reduce the consequences before it erupted because her fiery determination was on the verge of escalating. Jack and Victor squabbled once more, exchanging scathing jabs over family issues that neither man was prepared to concede. The conflict remained as poisonous as ever as their enmity permeated their children's lives. Meanwhile, those closest to Kyle were taken aback by his audacious move, which caused them to wonder if he was prepared for the fallout. Victoria's concern about Claire grew in the meantime. She couldn't get rid of the worry that the decisions, and people, around her were endangering her daughter's future. When Nikki made a significant move at Chancellor, she acted decisively and solidified her authority in ways that may impact the course of the business. With a new assignment that was expected to upend relationships on both a personal and professional level, Amanda returned to Genoa City. Tension and curiosity were aroused just by her presence. At the same time, Jack was shocked to learn about Kane's most recent scheme from Billy. Claire is left speechless by Kyle's grand gesture after Audra blows Nate away with the truth. According to the most recent Y&R and Restless teaser, Nikki and Victor are the only happy couple. Kyle and Audra's relationships have been blown out of proportion as a result of their vacation to Nice, but will they be able to save them? Claire was aware that Kyle had been lying about what had transpired between him and Audra in France. Conversely, Audra has had little trouble implying that Kyle is considering her. Claire was pushed to the limit and asked Kyle for the truth. "Claire, the reality is too much for you." Kyle told her everything, even that he kissed Audra, but it was all a plot to trick her. Kyle is ready to show Claire how much he values her and that she is the one he wants to spend the rest of his life with next week. He gives her an engagement ring as a surprise. Will Kyle be taken aback by Claire's response, though? Claire told Nate what she had agreed to with Victor in her power struggle in order to exact revenge on Audra. Like Kyle, Audra made excuses, which left Nate speechless. Audra eventually confesses to Nate that she stole Victor's agreement and pursued Kyle to obtain what she desired, just like Kyle did before her. It's possible that Kyle and Audra will end up together after their better halves reject them both. It's time for a little happiness at last. To show Victor how much she loves him, Nikki chooses to surprise him by turning the tables on him. The shifting sands of Genoa City seemed more treacherous than ever as Victor Newman made a ruthless deal with Kane Ashby, the kind of deal that left no room for negotiation, reminding Kane in chilling fashion that no one, not even a clever manipulator like himself, could ever truly outmaneuver Victor for long. And as Kane stood there, his composure cracking ever so slightly under the weight of Victor's iron will, he was forced to reassess his entire strategy, realizing that his enigmatic absence From Genoa City, and the secret empire he had been building abroad could no longer remain neatly hidden in the shadows now that Victor had turned the spotlight on him. Meanwhile, Kyle Abbott, caught up in his own whirlwind of impulsive emotions, decided that the best way to secure his future with Claire Newman was to pop the question in an audacious move that left his family and friends stunned, for while some saw it as a romantic gesture, others whispered it was nothing more than a desperate attempt to solidify control over a relationship already strained by lies and betrayals, particularly when the spectre of his dalliance with Audra Charles in France still lingered over him, gnawing at Claire's trust despite his assurances that it had all been part of a ruse, a performance meant to mislead Audra rather than a true betrayal, though Claire could not help but wonder if Kyle's heart had betrayed him in the process, and as she demanded the truth, Kyle shocked her with an unflinching confession that he had indeed kissed Audra but swore it was calculated, not passionate. Yet Claire, her world tilting beneath her feet, could not reconcile the gesture with the man she thought she knew, while at the same time Lily Winters, haunted by her complicated history with Kane, refused to let him slip back into her life cloaked in mystery without answering the questions that had plagued her since his return, and so she cornered Holden, pressing him for answers, not allowing his evasions to satisfy her, determined instead to force Kane into the light where he could no longer dance around the truth. And Kane, in an uncharacteristically candid display, admitted fragments of the story, hinting at why he had preferred to keep his distance from those who once mattered most, painting his absence not as cowardice but as a calculated decision to protect something greater, though his words only raised more questions about whether his motives now were driven by family loyalty, genuine atonement, or something far more sinister brewing beneath the surface, and as his revelations rippled outward, those who had known him best began to re-examine every assumption they had carried, including the shadow of his late father Colin Atkinson, whose final, haunting presence seemed to loom in the air like unfinished business. And even as all of this unfolded, Adam and Nick Newman found themselves facing a rare moment of unity, setting aside their bitter rivalries in recognition of the fact that their family needed them working together far more than it needed them tearing each other apart. Though their truce was fragile, brittle as glass, carrying the potential to shatter at the slightest provocation. Yet for now it stood as a testament to the desperate times pressing down on the Newman family. While Nate Hastings unburdened himself to Devon, confessing that his relationship with Audra had crumbled, his honesty raising difficult questions about his judgment and the choices he had made under pressure, leaving Devon torn between sympathy and frustration at how quickly Nate's ambition had once again clouded his sense of loyalty. And through it all, Lily found herself wrestling with a flood of unresolved emotions tied to Kane, memories of passion, betrayal, heartbreak, and the fragile reconciliation they had once fought so hard for, feelings she thought she had buried only to find them clawing their way back to the surface as Kane's reappearance reopened wounds she was not ready to face, while across town, Nick was forced to intervene with Phyllis Summers, whose fiery determination to protect her family and assert her power was threatening to spiral out of control, compelling him to work overtime to contain the damage before it erupted into yet another disaster. And even as Nick labored to hold the line, Jack Abbott and Victor Newman reignited their perennial feud, exchanging bitter jabs and cutting remarks, each man unwilling to give an inch in their ongoing battle over family loyalty, legacy, and the scars of past betrayals, their enmity as toxic as ever and spilling inevitably into the lives of their children, ensnaring Kyle in the process as his bold proposal to Claire left those closest to him questioning whether he was truly prepared for the fallout of such a hasty, high-stakes decision, especially given Victoria Newman's mounting concern for her daughter, a worry she could not shake as she contemplated the risks that Kyle, Audra, and even Victor himself represented to Claire's well-being and her future. And as Victoria wrestled with her motherly instincts, Nikki Newman made a decisive move at Chancellor, consolidating her authority in a way that promised to reshape not only the company but also the delicate balance of power within Genoa City. While Amanda Sinclair's dramatic return to town added another volatile ingredient to the mix, her mere presence sparking curiosity and tension as whispers spread about the new assignment she had accepted, one poised to upend relationships both personal and professional, particularly when her trajectory intersected with Jack's, who was himself left reeling upon discovering the outlines of Kane's latest scheme thanks to Billy's sharp-eyed revelations. And against this backdrop of intrigue, betrayal, and power plays, Claire found herself pushed to the brink by Kyle's grand gesture, left speechless when he presented her with an engagement ring that symbolized both his devotion and his desperation, a symbol that came not long after Audra had delivered Nate a shattering truth of her own, blowing him away with a confession that laid bare her ruthless pursuit of power and her willingness to manipulate any man, Kyle included, to get what she wanted. And as Claire weighed Kyle's proposal, she could not ignore the knowledge that he had lied, that he had kissed Audra, that he had hidden things from her, and though his promise that she was the one he truly wanted rang with sincerity, her heart wavered between belief and doubt, torn apart by the memory of his betrayal and the hope of their future. And in the midst of her turmoil she confided in Nate, revealing the shocking truth about the deal she had struck with Victor in her own private battle for leverage against Audra, a revelation that left Nate stunned by the depth of her entanglement in the Newman game, while at the same time Audra herself could no longer hide her duplicity, finally confessing to Nate that she had stolen Victor's agreement and pursued Kyle not out of love but out of calculated desire to secure what she craved, her honesty exposing the mirror image between her and Kyle, two schemers who might, in the end, be destined to fall into each other's arms once their better halves, Claire and Nate, rejected them for the very flaws they shared. And yet amid the chaos, one glimmer of peace emerged in the form of Nikki and Victor, the only couple whose bond seemed unshakable in this storm, as Nikki, determined to remind her husband how much she loved him, decided to surprise Victor by turning the tables for once, an act of affection wrapped in power that promised to leave even the great Victor Newman momentarily caught off guard, a rare instance where love and loyalty triumphed, at least for a fleeting moment, in a town where schemes, betrayals, and battles for dominance so often consumed the light. The following days in Genoa City unfolded like a symphony of tension, where every note was heavy with secrets, power plays, and emotional stakes, and as Victor Newman tightened the noose of his latest deal around Kane Ashby's neck, the weight of his command reverberated not only through Kane's conscience but also through the power structures of the town itself, for Victor had not simply forced Kane into compliance, he had done so in a way that ensured every move Kane made from this point forward would serve Newman interests, effectively shackling the man who once prided himself on independence into becoming yet another pawn in Victor's endless chess game. And though Kane bristled at being reduced to such a role, he knew the price of defiance would be catastrophic, perhaps even fatal, yet what gnawed at him most was Lily's relentless pursuit of the truth, her unwillingness to accept half explanations or vague promises, her insistence that the man who had broken her heart so many times could not re-enter her orbit without laying bare the real reason for his absence, his empire, and his alliance with Victor. And as she pressed Holden, as she pushed him in every corner of town, Kane realized he was running out of time. For Lily was not a woman easily silenced, and her questions would eventually dig deep enough to expose everything, including motives he dared not admit even to himself, because beneath the surface of redemption and family ties lurked the shadow of darker intentions, perhaps even a hidden vendetta, something Colin Atkinson's ghost might have applauded. And while Kane struggled to balance Victor's dominance with Lily's scrutiny, Kyle Abbott found himself spiraling in his own web of choices, for his impulsive proposal to Claire Newman had not unfolded as he imagined, the fairytale acceptance he had dreamt of replaced instead by Claire's frozen silence, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock, fear, and betrayal as the memory of his kiss with Audra Charles lingered like poison in her veins. And though Kyle insisted that the kiss meant nothing, that it was part of a ploy, that Claire was the only woman he wanted to spend his life with, the timing of his confession before the proposal cast a pall over the entire gesture, leaving Claire questioning whether his ring was a symbol of true devotion or a desperate attempt to erase his mistakes. And as word of the proposal spread across Genoa City, reactions divided along sharp lines, with some applauding Kyle's boldness while others muttered that it was reckless, a ploy not unlike Victor's schemes, a calculated gamble with Claire's heart at stake. And Victoria Newman in particular could not shake her dread that her daughter was entangling herself with a man who carried too many echoes of her father's ruthlessness, too many dangerous parallels to Victor's unyielding need for control. While across town Audra reveled in the chaos she had sown, slipping truth like daggers into conversations with Nate Hastings, leaving him staggered by the admission that she had pursued Kyle and even stolen parts of Victor's agreement as a way to carve out her own power, her audacity shocking Nate yet also forcing him to recognize that he too had been guilty of ambition clouding judgment, his failures with Audra echoing through his confession to Devon, reopening wounds of betrayal and making him question whether he was truly cut out for the trust and responsibility of family. But while Audra's candor rattled Nate, it also positioned her as a wild card in the ongoing Newman-Abbott clash. For she had proven time and again that she would bend loyalty and truth to fit her ambitions, much like Kyle, much like Victor himself, and in that mirror of ruthlessness she saw not weakness but kinship, though whether it would lead her into Kyle's arms or into Victor's crosshairs remained a question suspended over every interaction. Meanwhile, Nick Newman continued to labor quietly but urgently to contain the firestorm Phyllis Summers was intent on igniting, her sharp instincts pushing her toward revelations that could expose not only corporate secrets but also personal betrayals. And though Nick admired her courage, he feared her recklessness, stepping in again and again to temper her flames before they spread beyond control. And yet every intervention only highlighted the fragility of the Newman truce, for Adam, though committed to their temporary peace, never missed an opportunity to needle his brother, and Nick's patience frayed as old resentments resurfaced, until it seemed only Victor's looming authority held them from breaking apart once more, and even that was tenuous, for Jack Abbott's escalating feud with Victor served as constant fuel for the Newman sons' discontent, Jack firing volleys of accusations and Victor countering with biting truths, their battle as poisonous as ever, their inability to step back leaving collateral damage in the lives of their children. And nowhere was this clearer than in Kyle's predicament, for every choice he made seemed shadowed by Jack's conflict with Victor. Claire caught in the crossfire as she questioned whether accepting Kyle's proposal meant aligning herself with the Abbotts in a war she wanted no part of. And while she wrestled with that truth, Amanda Sinclair's return to town added a spark of unpredictable energy, her new assignment at Chancellor setting the stage for professional rivalries that could spill into personal vendettas, particularly as Nikki Newman cemented her authority in decisive moves that promised to reshape Chancellor's direction, leaving Amanda both challenged and intrigued by the shifting power balance. And in all of this, Kane's revelations, drip-fed in cryptic pieces, took on heightened significance, for Billy Abbott's discovery of Kane's latest scheme hinted at something larger, a play that could intertwine with Victor's deal in dangerous ways, and Jack's shock at the news only deepened his suspicion that Kane was not to be trusted, his history of lies and manipulations too consistent to ignore. But as Billy pressed further, he uncovered threads that suggested Kane's motives were not merely personal, but tied to legacies stretching back to Colin and to shadows still unaccounted for, while Lily, still relentless, pushed Kane harder, her emotions raw as she demanded that he stop hiding, her heart torn between the pain he had caused and the inexplicable bond she could not sever. And though she told herself she was only digging for answers, her feelings betrayed her, for every question carried the weight of love not fully extinguished, and Kane, sensing her conflict, leaned on moments of candor to sway her, though never quite enough to reveal the full truth, always holding back that final piece as though it were a card that could change everything once played. And as this intricate web of betrayals, proposals, power struggles, and confessions spread through Genoa City, Claire Newman found herself at the eye of the storm, standing at a crossroads where Kyle's ring gleamed with promise and betrayal alike, where her deal with Victor tied her fate to her family's darkest instincts, and where her mother's concern pressed in like a warning she could not dismiss. And though she longed for certainty, for love untainted by lies, she knew that in Genoa City such purity was a luxury no one could afford. And so as she stared at Kyle's hopeful eyes, at the glittering ring in his hand, and at the weight of Victor's shadow over them all, she realized that no matter her answer, the war to come would reshape everything, leaving none of them untouched, because in Genoa City, happiness was always just another battlefield waiting to be claimed. But if Claire Newman thought she had even a moment to breathe before deciding Kyle Abbott's fate, she was sorely mistaken, because Genoa City never allowed quiet reflection. Not when Victor Newman was pulling strings behind the curtain and Kane Ashby was caught in the tightening grip of a deal he neither fully trusted nor fully understood. And as whispers of Kyle's proposal spread through society, the Abbott estate, and Newman Enterprises alike, speculation mounted over whether Claire would accept a ring that carried as much history of betrayal as it did promises of future happiness, while Victoria, watching from the sidelines, struggled between her role as a mother and her loyalty to her father, knowing that if Claire said yes, she would not only be binding herself to Kyle but to a legacy of conflict with Victor that could spiral out of control. Yet if she said no, she risked shattering her daughter's heart and driving her straight into rebellion. And while all eyes turned toward Claire's pending decision, Kane moved like a man with ghosts at his back, torn between Victor's suffocating grip and Lily's unrelenting pressure for the truth. And the longer he delayed, the more dangerous his silence became. Because Lily's questions were beginning to attract other ears, from Devon to Billy to even Jack, who knew better than anyone what it meant when a man with Kane's history returned to town with secrets tucked into every shadow. And as Lily stood her ground, reminding Kane of the years she had wasted loving a man who could never fully be honest, he realized she would not stop until he gave her something concrete. And yet the truth he carried was not the kind that could heal wounds, it was the kind that created new scars, the kind that could unravel everything he had worked for in his absence, perhaps even expose the darker reason behind Victor's interest in him. For Kane knew that Victor did nothing without purpose, and if Victor had turned the tables, then Kane had already stepped into a trap, one that might demand sacrifices he wasn't ready to make. While across town, Nick's tenuous alliance with Adam began to show cracks as Phyllis threatened to unleash another storm, her fiery instincts pushing her closer to revelations that could explode across both Newman and Abbott families. And Nick found himself torn between his duty to protect his family and his frustration at constantly having to clean up after the chaos others created. And through it all, Claire found herself replaying Kyle's words in her mind, his confession about Audra, his insistence that it was nothing but a ruse, his desperation to prove she was the one, and though her heart ached with the weight of wanting to believe him, her instincts screamed that love without trust was nothing more than another trap. And as she stared at the ring in her hand, she realized that her answer would not only decide her relationship with Kyle but would also set the tone for her own place in the Newman family's war, a war that was escalating even now with every choice Victor, Kane, and Jack made behind closed doors.